Dr. Ramsey, stop talking, please. I hope everybody's finished their main course. We're going to start the program, and the servers have promised us to be very unobtrusive as they bring the desserts, and no slurping of the coffee, please. To formally address you, Dr. Fazio, Mrs. Fazio, honoured guests, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, and Dr. Hyman, it's a great pleasure to welcome you all here again on this festive occasion, a happy occasion, an occasion to be celebrated to the nth degree, and an occasion for us to show our admiration and our love for our leader. I think most of us know why we're here, the chairmanship anniversary, but some of us may not know that Dr. Fazio has been an important cog in the organisation of the Cleveland Clinic, on the Board of Governors, on the Board of Trustees, and in the Division of Surgery. And here on behalf of the organisation of the Cleveland Clinic is our Chief Executive Officer, Dr. Fred Luth.
Thank you. Good evening. Since this is a most distinguished gathering representing one of the most important departments at the Cleveland Clinic, I'm going to begin with a brief story that is applicable to this specialty and to this audience. Queen Elizabeth I, you remember the Virgin Queen, was a grand, historic, and widely celebrated monarch in the 16th century. Queen Elizabeth kept an opulent court, and one of her favorite peers was the Earl of Oxford. One day the Earl, who was a very vain man, was bowing low to the Queen when he audibly expelled gas. Now the Earl was so ashamed and abashed that he fled the court and went abroad for 7 long years. Eventually he overcame this personal shame and returned to England, and upon hearing of his arrival, the Queen immediately summoned him to court, and her first words were, "My lord, welcome home," and incidentally, I had completely forgotten about the fart. Well, now that I have your attention, we are here to honor a remarkable man who has done more than any living person to advance the Department of Colorectal Surgery at the Cleveland Clinic. After only 1 year on the staff, he was appointed department chair, and from that time on, he proceeded to build a department whose excellence is recognized around the world. We've now had 25 years to study Victor Fazio and learn from his extraordinary abilities. His lessons in leadership are clear, and before anyone says anything about him this evening, I want to tell you that he is a master surgeon. He is not a milli-equivalent bureaucrat that so often head departments around the world. Victor knows the way, shows the way, goes the way. He not only accepts responsibility, he relishes in it with great intensity. As a result, he is an inspiration not only to the department, but to the Cleveland Clinic as a whole. He is imaginative, intuitive, and wise. His reputation has been built on continuous innovation and improvement, and he will be the first to tell you that he could not have done any of this alone. But this, too, is a measure of his leadership, and the presence of Doctors Lavery, Church, Strong, Hall, Senegor, Ramsey, and Wu attest to his great skills as a recruiter. Additionally, Dr. Fazio has held other important posts. He's presided over the American Board of Colon and Rectal Surgery. He's been president of the Society of Colon and Rectal Surgeons, editor-in-chief of the journal. He's traveled extensively, receiving numerous awards, visiting professorships, many speaking engagements, and in 1997 received an honorary degree as Master of Surgery from the University of Sydney. He is one of two people in the past 3 decades who have been elected to the Board of Governors of the Cleveland Clinic twice, and he has chaired the nominating committee along with many other assignments. His voice and reason are clear and have been great assets to the Board of Governors. What I personally like about Vic is his strong, confident presence, his ability to make it happen. He has shown us an inspired life in action. Almost a century ago, one of the founders of the American College of Surgeons observed that it is the purpose of every man's life to do something worthy of the recognition and appreciation of his fellow men. By their superior qualifications, their fidelity to purpose, and above all, their indefatigable labor, the few become leaders. Dr. Fazio is one of these few. We recognize it and we appreciate it. He has given us his loyalty and devotion, and by his efforts, he has helped this wonderful Cleveland Clinic become a great cathedral of health care. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Loop. Dr. Loop has a unique perspective on everybody at the clinic, and the remarks are unique. Well, before we start putting Dr. Fazio under the red light, we're going to spend a bit of time acknowledging people that have helped make this evening happen. I want to start by mentioning somebody who, over the last year, has put her heart and soul into this meeting. She has been in all the details and the big things. She's been everywhere. And yet, this has been her top priority. Can I get you to stand up and be acknowledged, Patrick? Pat, thank you so much. Pat will acknowledge that she has had a small army of helpers, and some of those you might have seen today: Debbie Queller, Marty Hodgson. I'm not going to mention everybody because then I'll leave somebody out. But on behalf of everyone here, I want to thank the staff of the Department of Colon and Rectal Surgery for making this happen. I also want to acknowledge the audiovisual staff, both here for the work that they are about to do, and at the Cleveland Clinic for the work that you're going to see shortly. I'll say no more than that, but just to acknowledge them. And finally, those of you sitting in this half of the room hopefully would have heard the dinner music, and with great pride I want to thank my own beautiful daughter, Lucy. It's obvious that she inherited her mother's looks. Finally, we owe thanks to one more person, and I'm going to need a little bit of help in thanking her, and so I'm going to ask the honoree for the evening to come and help me out.
You're going to get a second dose of me a little bit later, I suspect, in reply to some scandalous remarks to be made by several others hereafter. But it's my happy role right now to thank someone in our department who has been absolutely outstanding in putting time, effort, I suspect money, and certainly blood, sweat and tears into making this program successful. Some time ago we asked Tracy Hull to assume the role of program chairman for our annual scientific venture each October, and she has put together a program this time which has excelled and which I regard as possibly the best one we've ever had. So without more ado, I'd like you all to thank Tracy in the usual way and ask her to come up to be recognized. Tracy Hull. Tracy, this small memento thanks you on behalf of the department for outstanding guidance, creativity, endurance. October 6, 2000. Thank you. And there's you have to say something.
Thank you very much. Dr. Fazio, you don't even give your secretary and your wife flowers. So I really feel honored. I guess I'm speechless, and I know y'all, people that know me very well, think that has to be really hard to do. I guess that's right. I'm prepared to say a few words about Dr. Fazio, so you'll have to wait for those. But thank you very much. I hope you, the people that were at the educational symposium today, enjoyed it. I thank the speakers. They did an outstanding job. There were very few people sleeping in the back. I was so impressed. And the people that came tonight to honor Dr. Fazio, thank you very much for taking time out of your schedules, because we all think he's very special, and obviously you do too, to be here. So thank you.
What is he doing with a chair up on the stage, I hear you wondering? That'll be made plain in a minute. Some of you may know that one of my responsibilities in the department at the clinic is to head up the inherited colorectal cancer registries. And in the course of that, I've become quite familiar with researching family trees and delving into people's backgrounds. And so when I knew that this was coming up, I thought, well, it might be interesting to look back into the Fazio family tree and see what sort of rotten branches we can unearth. And I've brought with me the results of some of that research tonight, and I'm going to show you some of it on the screens up ahead. If we can start with the slides and turn the lights down somewhat, please. I was very surprised to find that the Fazio family goes back thousands of years. In fact, I think there's a pyramid somewhere with a Fazio buried at the bottom of it. But that line of the family seemed to dwindle, and I lost trace of it until the Elizabethan age. And then I found that it wasn't Sir Francis Drake that beat back the Armada, it was Sir Francis Fazio. Salt blood seems to run in the Fazio veins because only another 150 years later, and a very successful young naval captain helped defend the British possessions in the West Indies against the might of Napoleon. I found that he rose quickly through the ranks, and it was not too long before he became a rear admiral. A branch of the family then made it across the Atlantic, and, oh, where are we? He's reluctant to come up. Took part in the American Civil War, with General Fazio directing the troops on the losing side, unfortunately, and that caused the family to be exiled to Australia. With a bullet or a rocket. And so we come to the Australian branch of the Fazio family. And again, Vic was a hit from the moment he was born. In fact, at his kindergarten class, he was the center of attention. In fact, he was such a distraction in the class that the teachers wanted to know what to do with him, and so they got other sorts of babysitters, which may account for his interest in pouch surgery even now. The Fazio family was very sporting. He liked to dodge cars on the motorway. And the Fazios, I don't think it was this Fazio, there was a rumour they played rugby for Australia. You see here that he's giving a Welshman the slip quite easily. If that jersey had been black, Fazio would have been flattened, I think. New Zealand did have an interest in the Fazio clan and managed to recruit one of them to its cricket team, which accounts for the bad win-loss record. And then they took up golf. I couldn't get the right name on this slide, but at the bottom it says, Fazio doesn't just play golf, he destroys it. And so, I have to tell you there's no truth to the rumour that the family comes from Sicily. There's no truth to the rumour that every staff meeting we've made an offer we can't refuse. We're not at all afraid of the relatives coming knocking on the door in the middle of the night. I just wanted to point that out. But we are made to beware of Fazios bearing gifts. And finally, before we move on, I thought you might be interested in hearing how Victor Fazio became interested in colorectal surgery in the first place. And in order to understand that, you have to understand a couple of things about Australia in the 1950s. One is that there was really no television and very little radio, and the Aussies weren't interested in the movie theatres, but they had a fanatical interest in the circus. The other thing is that although, and I hesitate to mention this word with my daughter in the room, the word bastard is not used in polite society here, but it's almost an endearment in Australia. So you'll forgive me if I have to include that in the story. Well, anyway, young Victor had been going to the circus ever since he could walk, and he developed a great affection for the lion taming act. And when he was about 10, Watch had come to town and set up camp just across the road from Victor's house, but a circus with cages full of lions. And by this time, Vic was thinking about running away from home, and so he decided to see if he could join the circus as an assistant lion tamer. So one Sunday afternoon, after the circus had calmed down, everyone had gone home, Vic crept around behind the lion tamer's tent and knocked on the tent door. The lion tamer said, "Yes, who's that?" Vic said, "Oh, it's just me, Victor Fazio." "Are you the lion tamer?" And he said, "Yes, as a matter of fact I am." "Can I come in and ask you a few questions?" "Sure. What is it you'd like to know?" I want to be a lion tamer. I want you to show me what you do." "Oh, really? It's Sunday afternoon. I'm tired. We just had a show." "Oh, no, please. Please, mate." "Okay," said the lion tamer. "Come with me. Come on." He was resigned. So he took him into the big top where the lions hadn't quite been put away. They were still in their cage with ready access to the ring. And the lion tamer said, "Well, these are the tools of my trade. You've got your chair and your stick. Chair and a stick. And you want to see me use these?" And Vic said, "Yeah." "Okay," he said, "let out the lions." And so they opened the cage door. The lions came traipsing into the ring, got up on their little stools, and was sort of pawing the air menacingly. Vic was a bit scared. Lion tamer said, "Get in behind me, boy. Just get in here." So Vic went in behind the lion tamer, and the lions were getting a bit more angry, and so Vic held up his chair and his stick. He said, "Get back, back." And Vic said, pretty scary. And the lion tamer said, yeah, but I've got my chair and my stick. And Vic said, well, what do you do if one of them jumps off the stool and comes after you? And the lion tamer said, well, you get your chair and your stick and you throw the chair at the lion and you hit it with the stick. But Vic said, what do you do if it keeps coming? The lion tamer said, well, you put down your chair and you reach down behind you and you pick up a big piece of poop and you throw it at the bastard. And Vic said, well, how do you know there's going to be poop there? The lion tamer said, it'll be there, boy, don't you worry. And Vic thought, now, why would the poop be there? And then he thought, well, poop, that's an interesting sort of thing. I think I might study that. I think I might go to medical school. I think I might be a colorectal surgeon. And that's the story of how Dr. Fazio got interested in colorectal surgery. Well, it's a long way from Sydney to the Cleveland Clinic, and here to tell us about the early days at Cleveland is Vic's special friend and ex-compatriot in arms, Ira Codner.
Strikes fear in your heart, doesn't it, Brick? If I could have my slides on, please. This is a story of Vic, not the Lions, and Carolyn, and family, and colleagues. Over the 25 years, the residents, the fellows, the students, and friends. You're surrounded by your friends. And I think this has been one of the great things that we've all shared over these years. We've all sacrificed to advance the level of patient care and to learn. It's an amazing privilege to be able to do these things and enjoy ourselves and really forward patient care. So this isn't just a tribute to Vic, but a description of how productive a person can be and how much one individual can really influence the world. There were the great teachers at the Cleveland Clinic. Rupert Turnbull, whom we honor tonight, was a master surgeon and a great innovator. He taught us how to do things that we never thought we would be able to do. He was always willing to answer my questions in such a loving way. I just remember this view of Dr. Turnbull looking at me over the operating table thinking, won't it be nice when he goes back to St. Louis? And Frank Weekly. Frank was always on the frontier of technology. He taught us anal rectal surgery and the application of audiovisual technology. I mean, think what you go through now when you come to a meeting. Should you take slides? Should you take a CD-ROM? Should you take a floppy disk? Should you put your computer on there? Frank had great pictures. And we approached Frank and said, Frank, you know, we're going out into an academic career and we would really like to share some of these pictures. And he said no. So Ian and David and I came in at night. I can't say anything bad about David because he's not here to defend himself, bless his heart. It was Ian's fault. So we copied Frank's entire slide collection at night. But Frank did contribute to our knowledge of teaching and audiovisual advances, as most of us will remember. always carry a frog with you, because if the cable goes out on the slide changer, you can get the next slide. So I came to the Cleveland Clinic with my family because of the great names such as Rupert Turnbull and George Cryle Jr. And as Dr. Loop said, this was the cathedral of healthcare in its early days. This is the Procto room of the cathedral that Dr. Turnbull was very, very proud of. Looks primitive now. And this was Cleveland. It's really just a joke. The weather is really wonderful. There isn't going to be snow over the weekend. It's just a joke. They're not really predicting that. I'd never seen anyone fish before where they had to hook the fish on the side because the fish was too sick to bite on the hook. And this is my wife. We had a new baby, unfortunately born not well, so I had to lean on my friends a lot while I was here. But we pursued and enjoyed all of the sights of downtown Cleveland and the great artwork. This is Cleveland Primitive. And then I discovered, as this cartoon said, what creatures are found in Australia that are found nowhere else on Earth? And the answer, obviously, is Australians. And my life has been the better for it. This goes back to the early days. I will admonish the young surgeons and the young people in the audience, take pictures. This is Vic and David Jagelman as we were all starting out, and Norma Gill, the first enterostomal therapist in her early days, starting the program at the Cleveland Clinic. Marilyn Spencer, Joni Kerr. We had great times. That's Paulie, one of the nurses that worked for Vic, referred to affectionately as Bones. And the residents from Israel, Danny Merrilman is there. It's amazing to see these pictures of all of us looking young. Danny is very gray now. This is one of the advances for which the Cleveland Clinic should be justifiably proud. This was 1974, and it was the beginning of minimally invasive surgery. This is Malcolm Goldsmith looking at the umbilicus of Al Kramer with a proctoscope. Cleveland Clinic was always on the frontier. Pat Ginley was or is an administrator now. He was a PA in the operating room. He made the copy machine from which we stole all of Frank's slides. There's a picture of Ian Cunningham, who was really a pillar of strength a year ahead of me. This is a picture of Ian as an adult, because I don't think he was ever a youth. And Vic. We celebrated Vic's birthday. We called him Bloody Vic. Bloody took on a new meaning for me. From the Midwest, bloody meant, you know. And we were a very sophisticated lot. This was Vic's first educational venture into publishing. You know, if you start by putting an ileostomy on a Playboy Playmate, you know, you eventually end up being the editor of Diseases of the Colon and Rectum. And we had great times. This is the whole herd of us at the Blossom Music Festival. We shared cultural endeavors. I was trying to teach these foreigners to eat watermelon. These are young Laverys and young Jagelmans and young Codners. The kids picked it up quickly. They knew how to eat watermelon. It's a little bit more difficult for the grown-ups, especially for Jagelman, because smoking a cigarette and eating watermelon was really difficult to do. But David was a master of many things. In return, they challenged my cultural background and taught me how to celebrate Easter. That's the Easter Bunny. It's the only one I knew of. The Easter Bunny looks like Jagelman. And even, taught my kids how to hunt for Easter eggs. That's a little Lavery, collecting Easter eggs. It's hard to believe he's been in the Army now for several years. I, on the other hand, taught them how to eat bagels and cream cheese. Richard Jagelman really caught on very quickly. He was a master. And as we did this, we watched Dr. Turnbull design this pendant to be used for the president of the American Society of Colon and Rectal Surgeons. And we thought it was cute. We took pictures of it. Dr. Turnbull did it in honor of Dr. Hanley and Dr. John Hill. It's dated 1975. And I remember taking pictures of the drawing with the machine that we used to steal Frank's slides. And then Dr. Turnbull bid us all farewell. Vic stayed and became the chief. Some of us went into the wilds of the various places for our careers. I tried to concentrate on my specialty wherever I went. And we had great times. This is Ian Todd in England. One of the early trips where our paths came back together was in London. You can see the Carolyn with the Jagelmans and my wife Barb. They're having a heat wave in London. There's no air conditioning in London. But I knew then that Vic was a born leader, as Dr. Loop said. He always adapted well, even to the heat on the bus in London. And the Brits did this incredible thing. The invitation said that you had to wear formal wear. So we wore tuxedos, and we went to a cow pasture. There was an opera, and there was a cow pasture. It's called Glyndebourne. I couldn't believe this place. But David and Ann were perfectly at ease. They knew that you go in and you sleep through the first half of the opera, and then you go out and you drink champagne and have a picnic. And I had a little trouble in a tuxedo adapting to sitting in the grass with the cows. But Victor was always at ease. He just had a savoir-faire about him. So he was just perfectly comfortable under any situation. And then he trained one of our residents, Bob Fry, who came back to join me. And Bob and I were partners for many years and built our own academic program at Washington University in St. Louis. And the combination of Vic and Bob over the years have taught me the meaning of semi-adult behavior. I'm going to tell you a secret. Vic's shirt is never tucked in. Some of us know this. And when Vic is moderating a panel, we always send up a question. Is your shirt tucked in? And you can always tell when the question hits him. There's this little flinch. He, on the other hand, when he introduces us, and we come up as we do for a formal presentation, and he pins the lavalier microphone on our tie, he always starts his hand back and pulls my shirt out. I said, God, I gotta go give a whole lecture with my shirt out. I don't know how you do that. And then Bob taught me further. Here you see Frank Weekly in the time of mutton chop sideburns. And this was Bob's skill. You see what he's doing? He's pulling on Weekly's mutton chop sideburns, and then he denies it, and I get the blame for it. This went on for years and years and years. It's amazing, this bond of friendship. And we did very special things. Vic and I, for many years, tried to advance enteral stomal therapy. Here you see Vic with Norma Gill and Catherine Jeter and such great people as Brian Brook. It's been a privilege to know and to work with all the people. And we would come back to Cleveland frequently. It got to be sentimental because we started coming back to Cleveland for Turnbull memorials. Here you see with Richard Farmer and Mrs. Turnbull. And it's a bond that's hard to explain to people who don't know. This has gone on for many years. And the friends that have been part of this with Vic, Randall Karen and Byron Gathright, Yannick Chu, this is at one of our meetings. And we had the privilege at the tripartite of seeing Carolyn and Vic on their own turf in Australia, and learned where Vic really belongs. He's drinking a beer, leaning over the rail mates. And I tried to maintain the tradition of the Cleveland Clinic. This is Dr. Cryle with Dr. Bricker, one of our greats from Washington University. I brought Dr. Cryle to speak, and I should have known when I brought him in, and he was really ambitious, and he was expressing political views, and I had him sitting next to the board of directors of our hospital, Jewish hospital. And I heard Dr. Cryle say to him, you know, the problem is you need to change the name of the hospital because sick people really don't want to be around Jews. So I did the only thing I knew how to do, which was just keep eating. That's how I solved my problems. Sometimes it's harder than other times to maintain our allegiance to Cleveland. And then the time came where Vic was wearing the chain that Dr. Turnbull designed. And it became clear that the great people were very close to us. And Carolyn was always there, making sure that Vic was wearing the chain properly and doing the right thing with it. And my sick little kid grew up and became a beautiful woman and was at Vic's presidential dance. And the friendship went on, and we started wearing tuxedos to these events instead of sitting in the audience casting stones. I think I have a few more. Need to change the carousel. And this wonderful picture of Vic and Carolyn in Vic's presidential year of the American Society of Colon and Rectal Surgeons. It's been a very special friendship and relationship for all of us. If I could get him to quit messing with my head. I don't know what it is, Victor. Leave my head alone. And along with all of the great times have been our spouses, and it has been a wonderful experience. And we dance at our daughters' weddings. It gets better and better as time goes on. And this is Vic at one of our affairs practicing being a grandfather. And it happened. The practice paid off, and now he's a grandfather. And apparently he's doing a pretty good job. And then Vic was in the ranks of the past presidents of colon and rectal surgeons. And we had a great event with some of our very senior past presidents, some contemporaries of Dr. Turnbull. So what about Vic? I've shown you all of these people and all of this experience that we had. Vic has set the standard for excellence in colon and rectal surgery to which the world aspires. And by his energy, teaching skills, expertise, and desire to share, he's helped to raise the standard of care for suffering patients throughout the world. An unbelievable accomplishment. So Barbara and I congratulate you. We love you. Carolyn and Vic, our admonition to you, give it a shot for another 25.
Thank you so much, Ira, for giving us that insight into life with the Fazios. Sounds like a TV sitcom, doesn't it? Life with the Fazios. We're about to hear from some of Vic's patients, and it's something special to have a group of patients give a testimonial at an event like this. But before we do that, I want to show you what it's like from the patient's point of view to meet Dr. Victor Fazio. And so can we run the video, please?
Fazio, your 9 o'clock appointment is here.
Hello, Angel. I'm Victor Fazio.
Oh, hello.
I just received your letter from my good friend, Dr. King. As a matter of fact, Dr. King and I are very good friends. Angel, you need an operation. The long and the short of it is that there are a number of problems that could go wrong, and my chief residents will go over those with you. But to put it into proper perspective, the quoted complication rate for this procedure in the world's experience is 40%. At the Cleveland Clinic, the complication rate is 25%. In Mexico, the complication rate is 14%. In Ecuador, the complication rate is 89%. In Egypt, the complication rate is 73.2%. In my hands, there's never been a single complication related to this procedure. The way we'll work it out is the following. My secretary, Linda, will get you in touch with my nurse, Beth. My nurse, Beth, will arrange the scheduling, and if I'm not here, my chief resident or one of my associates will or will not, perhaps may or may not.
Dr. Fazio, Dr. Ben Shalom is on 4-2 outside, please.
Tell him I'll be right there. Circumstance. You'll be discharged from the hospital the same day we perform the procedure. In the worst case scenario, you'll be here 439 days.
So what's wrong with me?
You have a second-degree hemorrhoid, darling, and it's got to be banded.
Dr. Fazio, your 9:45 is here.
Oh, Christ, I'm running late again.
Video off, thanks. And now, as promised, we'll hear from the patient side of the desk. And to start with, I'd like to introduce to you Mrs. Lucy Cook Ambrosi.
When I was asked to make this speech, I thought, how could I ever reach for words that could so aptly say what I feel in my heart and soul each day? For way back in '88, years of harsh Crohn's had seemed to seal my fate. I came to Cleveland just to see what this famed surgeon could do for me. I had met so many doctors despite my young age that skepticism and extreme caution was the usual reading on my gauge. But this man was so different, so focused on my feelings and emotions, not just the facts and the latest lists of taken potions. I felt like his only patient. How could this be? There were so many others waiting besides me. With his ears open wide and his heart truly hearing your unspoken fears, one immediately felt as if you had known him for years. He listened to my tale of woe, then gently said, "It has got to go. You'll feel much better once it's out, that colon with its nasty clout." It wasn't so fun to be so ill, so I was counting on his skill. The hands so deftly trained, I guess the surgery was ordained. It was but one of 22. He finally said, "Enough for you." But 23 was yet to be, a surgery that would bring much glee. So many doctors had said that a baby for me there could never be, because all the surgeries of the past, they said that too many obstacles had been forever cast. They weren't aware of the skill with which my bowels had been tackled. Boy, were they ever baffled. For those other doctors, they were wrong, and Dr. Fazio was right, a premise which we have come to live by and always keep in sight. As you may have guessed by now, Surgery 23 brought a baby girl for Steve and me. She's named for Victor Fazio. Victoria Grace will one day know the story of my special friend who has always found a way to mend. In your wife, too, we have found a dear friend. She must have patience to no end. For the hours and hours you have spent fixing us could have been hers, yet she makes no fuss. Each one of us in this big room can tell a tale that has some gloom, but we all know that we have been oh so blessed to know that we have had and known the very best. My dad has had some tough times, too. My gosh, we've really bothered you. But each time that we've called on you, you've never failed to see us through. And that's just why we're gathered here, to honor this fine man oh so dear. I love this man, my family too, forever thinks the world of you. Over and over, my life he has handed back to me. How do you thank a man to which your health, he is the key? Each day as I walk through my life, healthy and pain-free, with my daughter of 2, I think to myself, these wonders would not be if it had not been for you. Thank you, Dr. Fazio, from the bottom of my heart.
Thank you so much, Lucy. And now Mrs. Kathy Eberlin.
First of all, I'd like to say, if I don't faint from nerves, or if I do faint from nerves, Dr. Fazio is the only one to touch me, okay? When I was diagnosed with cancer 8 years ago, what I remember at that time is my local physician said, he called me up when he found out that I had cancer. He said, Kathy, don't worry. I got you the best. I got you Victor Fazio up at the Cleveland Clinic. And I just remember feeling at ease when he said, you got the best. And I really did. When I first heard his name, Victor Fazio, I was so excited because my father's name is Victor and my last name is Domincetti. So I thought, oh, I'm going to have this hunky Italian guy. Excited. And then I thought, duh, who wants a, hunky Italian guy looking at your butt, So I was hoping, that he wasn't, So when he walked in, he said, hello. And, you could tell then that he wasn't Italian, but Australians are cool too, so it was okay. So, what the other man said, he just has, what you said, I think, he has that air of confidence, and when he comes in, he doesn't come in like in a cocky manner, but he comes in with confidence, and just like that tape, it was so true. Well, the incidence of, I have a high incidence rate, and so he does put you, that was so true, and but he does put you at ease, and you're so confident when you're in there talking to him. One patient I talked to several of his patients because if you're, just talking to people, you just run into Dr. Fazio's patients. And one girl was telling me how she was in there having her colonoscopy and they hadn't given her medication and she was like, oh, let this get over with. She was in pain and everything and he was holding her hand and he was telling her of his trip to India, but he was not talking about the people he met or the sights that he saw. He was talking about how excited he was because the incidence of colorectal in women had gone up because of the soil or whatever. And she was like, why is he telling me this? I don't need to know that. And she said, boy, that man must really be in a colorectal. She couldn't believe it. But so just like the tape, that's perfect, the tape. I talked to another patient that he had in 1978. He gave her 3 months to live. I didn't have to go to the great beyond. She's still alive and doing very well. But she remembers a younger, thinner Dr. Fazio. Because I said, well, what did he look like? But one thing that she remembers about him, though, is he had not eaten lunch that day, and her husband was sitting over there eating Spanish peanuts, and Dr. Fazio ate all the man's Spanish peanuts. So when we're done, I'll give you these, because she wanted you to have the Spanish peanuts, because she knew you like this. Another patient I talked to, it wasn't anything funny that she remembered, but you saw her in 1998, and she said what she remembers is you didn't know her from Adam, but somebody had made a referral to you, and you just fit her right in. You were so busy, but you fit her right in, and you even stole somebody's surgery spot to get her in, they said. And she just wanted to let you know how special you made her feel. And I'm sure you make most of your patients feel special. I know I do. So, another patient tells me that every time she comes in to see you, you say, let me see my Michelangelo, and you look at her scar, and it's a little, I'm a little jealous here, it's a little bikini cut, and it looks like a smile face. So, she loves it. She wanted me to give you this, and I've had this all day, so it's kind of, it was supposed to be a smile face, but maybe that's what hers looks like now, I don't know, but. And I'm jealous because if anybody would like to see my scar, it does not look like a smile face. It's from here to here, and it's about this thick, and it looks like a construction zone, but, you know, when you've had cancer, you just don't care about the scar, so. What do I remember about Dr. Fazio? It was 8 years ago, it was a long time ago, but I have something here that probably not many people have from him. I have his autograph. That's me and my little boy. And I was 30 when I was diagnosed with rectal cancer, and I was pregnant at the time. And he saved me and my little boy, so that's us, and that's his autograph, so I keep it in my desk. So, yeah. I also have a little girl now, and she's 3, so that's a miracle. Another thing that we got to do together was we were in Good Housekeeping together. I'm sure he wasn't very impressed with Good Housekeeping. I know he wanted New England Journal of Medicine or something. Good Housekeeping, I don't think he even knew what was in Good Housekeeping, but it says he's the 318 top cancer specialist for women, and this is our picture in there. The one thing I remember about that is when he came, I said, well, congratulations. And he said, oh, thank you. Yes, I just had a new grandbaby. And he started talking about his new grandchild. And I said, no, I mean for the magazine article. And he's like, oh, you know. And I think that says a lot about Dr. Fazio, too, is that, you know, the accolades and all the awards that he wins, but really his family is so important to him. During that shoot, there was something about Playboy, too, but I don't remember. One of your friends was going by. No, anyway. Of course, what can I say about a man who knows more about me than even my husband? I mean, this man has seen more of me than my husband. He knows me inside and out. He has gone places where nobody else has ever been. But really, I don't know Dr. Fazio all that well. Like I said, you know, you see him you don't see him in surgery because you're under, so you don't see him then, and then I've been following up with Dr. Hall, so I really don't know Dr. Fazio all that well, but every time I go in, I ask how he's doing, and everybody tells me little stories and little funny things about him, and I won't tell any of them, but I won't tell, but I do want to say, though, you know, really, they do tell stories, and they do, they always talk with such respect about you and such awe of you, I guess, and it's just, I don't know, I think it says something about you, too, that you're very respected by your colleagues. I wanted to tell a story, too, about, this was funny today because I work at a hospital, and I was talking to one of the surgeons, and I had to ask him a favor, you'll see in a minute, but I had to ask him a favor. I said, well, it's for my surgeon up in Cleveland Clinic. Do you know Victor Fazio? And he said, oh my God, you know Victor Fazio? Oh my God. And I said, well, yeah. And I said, he gave me my J pouch. And he said, wow. Well, he's known for the J pouch, you know. Oh, you know Victor Fazio. And he just kept going on. And as I walked away, I heard him go, Victor Fazio. Oh. So now I know Victor Fazio works, so he'll probably, you know. I do want to thank you for you really have saved my life and my son's life, and you know, God really brought you into my life as an angel. An angel is somebody that, you know, it's not something you do. I mean, God brings you there. It's not like something it's God's work, and you know, really God brought you into my life. There has been so many circumstances that made it happen, and you know, you've saved my life, you saved hundreds and thousands of other people's lives, and I know you will be rewarded in heaven for that. And I just wanted to say that you are a million times better than George Clooney. So, and also, don't you think he looks like he's lost weight? Doesn't he look like he's lost weight? But, I wanted to give him this basket of goodies, and this is your cocktail basket, and it makes such a good cocktail basket, but if you mix it now, you might have to run, so go lightly, and some Citron, and a Fleet phosphate soda, and some...
This is payback time.
That's right, and some Ready Cat, so he can, just go to it. So there you go, there's your goodies. And you got to get your peanuts in your thing. I got.
Thank you, Kathy. You gave a good impression of not being nervous. And now it's my pleasure to invite to the microphone a third one of Victor's patients, Dr. Sandy Weiss. Dr. Weiss is a friend to the Department of Colorectal Surgery, and it's a pleasure for us to have him at the podium this evening.
Good evening. It's interesting that this month, almost to the day, represents 50 years that I've been associated and a patient of this department. And I've known Dr. Fazio as a patient and a colleague and a friend for quite a while, over 25 years. And I'd like to take you back 25 years ago. Before the Cleveland Clinic adopted its edifice complex years ago, and there were 3 buildings. One was the clinic building on 96th. And the department at that time was not the Department of Colon and Rectal Surgery, it was proctology on S60. And the hospital, the main hospital, is what we now call the Children's Hospital. And nestled in between was a small little department, research department, where Doctors Corcoran, Page, Lewis, and Kolff tackled the problems of hypertension and kidney disease. And at that particular time, a great man passed away. And here was this kid from down under, Victor Fazio, who was expected to adopt the mantle of his mentor. And that was a tough cookie, believe me. And I can tell you that standing here 25 years later, as I've watched, he's done one hell of a job. As Dr. Loop said, he has become a master surgeon. Now, I was taught in my general surgery days, not only does a surgeon have to be technically superb, get excellent results, keep his complication down, but in surgery, when you watch him, it should be a ballet. Watch his hands. And those of you who have had the privilege of watching him in the last few days know that he is a technician beyond compare. As Dr. Loop also said, he has recruited and kept with him some brilliant surgeons in this department. To name a few, Ian Lavery, again, master technician, master surgeon. Jim Church, who moderates this program, a brilliant geneticist. David Jagelman, when he was alive. Countless others, and you've had a chance to meet some of them during this symposium, and you will meet others. He's trained countless residents and fellows, produced all kinds of papers on inflammatory disease, polyposis, and so on. And fortunately, I've had the privilege to sponsor a young man, Guy Harris, whom I think is here. And I'd love to see him before he leaves. Again, producing all kinds of papers, doing superb work in the last few years that I've known him. Now, having said that, I want to tell you a little bit about the man, Victor Fazio, the human being. And the best way I can do that is to relate a story about me. And going back to 1981, I had an abdominal peritoneal for rectal cancer for polyposis. And I went pooping along for about 18, 19 years without a problem until a couple of years ago. And at that time, to my dismay, routine chest x-ray showed hyaladenopathy. Now, those of you who are physicians know that when you hear hoofbeats in the distance, they're usually horses, not zebras. And so one evening, I sat in the basement of HB6 while the radiologists were trying to figure out where the primary was, rectal, which was the odds-on favorite, or perhaps pancreas adrenal. And I can tell you when you're sitting there, even as a physician in HB6, contemplating your mortality, or lack thereof, it's a very, very cold place. And Victor came down and sat with me that afternoon, and you know what we talked about? We talked about parasites. Now, why do we talk about parasites? Because Victor knew that in the 19 years since my surgery, I traveled all over the world. And obviously, he was trying to give me hope that perhaps this was a zebra. This was some sort of parasitic disease rather than the obvious metastatic cancer. Well, the outcome wasn't that pleasant if you consider sarcoidosis at the age of 67, but it was certainly better than the alternative. Now, why am I telling you this story? Well, I want the physicians in the audience to ask themselves a question. When was the last time that you took that stethoscope that we hang around our neck as a badge of honor and actually placed it on the chest of a patient, or placed it on the belly of a patient and listened? And for the layman in the audience, when was the last time your physicians actually put his hands on you and examined you? Or sat back at his desk and said, "Say, how's the family? How are you doing? What are you doing for fun? How are the kids?" Because, ladies and gentlemen, this is the day of imaging. This is the days of HMOs and CEOs and PPOs and Washington bureaucrats. And I can tell you that up on that 11th floor in the A building, there's a small island of colon rectal surgery under the leadership of Victor Fazio, where the art of medicine is practiced as well as the science of medicine, and the Hippocratic Oath really means something. And that, ladies and gentlemen, that, my friends, is a major part of the Turnbull legacy. Thank you.
Vic, I bet you're itching to respond to these. I think we're blessed by these insights and humbled to be included in this. We're going to move on now, and we couldn't just restrict our remarks to people living in America. We had to get someone in from outside, and who better to come and tell us some insights into Victor than Professor Liam Kirwan from Cork in Ireland. Liam.
Dr. Fazio, Mrs. Fazio, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, I feel distinctly intimidated by the quintessentially uninhibited ambience of the evening, because in Europe we're more measured about the way we fail to let things hang out and so forth. So it's very interesting for me to come here. And in fact, as the evening has gone on, it has occurred to me that my initial evaluation of how this would turn out has proved to be well-founded. I thought that I would take the trouble to cross the Atlantic and half of America and come here to introduce some note of irreverence into the evening. Because the plaudits have come hard and fast, what with standing ovations and Victor's name up in vulgar lights at the theatre, and epic poems from grateful, charming patients, I think it's time that we look to Victor's soul, because pride is the most heinous of the 7 deadly sins. And Victor is in serious danger of being so compromised this evening. Now, I first came to the Cleveland Clinic in 1976 because of the reputation of Dr. Turnbull. He was a very famous surgeon worldwide then, strutting around Europe, having public unseemly debates or rows with many of our most distinguished surgeons. And I quite liked the cut of him at meetings. And I said, coming towards the end of my training, I would like to go there and work with that man. He was definitely the man at the time. This was 1976. That's a long time ago. Secretaries were using carbon paper to type letters. Nixon had just been thrown out of the White House. And there was a 30% mortality in acute inflammatory bowel disease, which Turnbull was doing something about. So I wrote off to Dr. Turnbull. We had a very formal and correct correspondence, and eventually he said he would accept me in 1976. So we decamp, my beloved wife Mary and our 4 small children, and off we go to Cleveland, which I knew vaguely to be somewhere in the region of the Great Lakes of North America. Even in Ireland, Cleveland weather is legendary. I arrived to be greeted by Ian Lavery, whom I've loved dearly ever since, to be told, if I might use Irish parlance, that, and this was a very serious matter for me, that Turnbull had been decommissioned. He was no longer the man. This was a serious reverse for somebody who had put great store in, perhaps at a future time, being able to go back to Ireland and boast that I had worked with such a great man. I was told instead that he had been replaced by a fellow named Fazio, of whom I had never heard. He may have been of some accomplishment up to that time, but alas, it had escaped me from the distance. So I arrive, and Ian says, we'll go to see Vic. So I'm in some distress because a young man at that stage of his career has invested a considerable amount of his future reputation, self-esteem, etc., in working with a great person. And Turnbull was no longer in charge of the department. I never before confided to Vic, and I suppose it's a bit unsporting to do so quite publicly, my first impressions of him. I had, of course, seen Turnbull around Europe, and one expected an eminence grise. Instead, I was confronted with Victor, who was inappropriately youthful. Mind you, he was a lot less hirsute and significantly less portly than he is now. His youth was unseemly. He was possessed of a rather cavalier Antipodean affect and accent. And he was inhaling noxious hydrocarbons on one of the hospital corridors. This, of course, long before the age of political correctness, which is upon us now. So this was all worrying to a man on my mission. But I said, you're here now, Jack. You've got to make the most of it. And in any case, you can go back to Ireland. They won't know. You can tell them that you worked with the famous Turnbull, and you'll get away with this fine. And who knows, with the passage of time, Fazio, he may turn into something half decent. And so against all the odds it proved to be, And gradually one found oneself saying that one worked with Turnbull certainly, but Fazio came more into the picture as he became more famous. Now, I've only been given a very few minutes, and I won't abuse that. Although some speakers before me have been, I think, more verbose. The department was in transition, and I was very impressed at the time, and I'm being serious now for the first time, with the sensitivity and dexterity with which Victor managed what must have been an extremely difficult transition to the new regime in the department, which he has built up greatly since then. Victor has been very generous to me and to Irish surgeons generally, because he has come to Ireland on many occasions, and his visits are always most welcome. He likes to play golf. I'm not sure whether we should expose this weakness of his before the senior management of the Cleveland Clinic, but he does, when he comes abroad, like to play a game of golf. Now, it is a statistically proven rule that a surgeon's, and Victor is a great surgeon, perhaps one of the greatest in the world, that a surgeon's golfing prowess is in inverse proportion to his surgical talents. And nothing has happened during my games with Vic to disprove that theory. I would like to pay compliment to his scholarship, because he's one of the great scholars of American and world surgery, and universally recognized everywhere one goes. He has an encyclopedic knowledge of his subject. He has unbounded energy, and he has not lost his enthusiasm and zest for the operative surgical act, something which does happen to some surgeons as they get a little older. And he gave a good example of that yesterday when he took on, somewhat misguidedly, some of us thought, a case, and somewhat masochistically, I thought myself. In public, he took on a case which no sensible person would take on in public, and he muddled through somehow. But I think some of the time he didn't feel all that comfortable, and he made some reference to that earlier. But he hasn't lost his zest for the surgical act, and he's getting on a little bit now. It's good that he has retained that. He has run his department with great compassion always. And the final tribute I would like to pay to him is that he's a great educator. And when we all have spent our little while on the stage and fade away, it is the best thing that we can leave behind is a few students who have learned from us and who will remember us kindly for what we have taught them. So I am perhaps slightly different than the other speakers here, but I'm delighted to be here this evening. And if I have been a little irreverent in my dealing with the topic, it's only because I know that's what you would expect of me. Thank you very much.
Pat, I knew we shouldn't have let an Irish guy up here. Now we're going to have a little break from speeches, and we're going to look at another video. We dearly wish Joe Hahn to be here. Joe's the chairman of the Division of Surgeons at the Cleveland Clinic, a close friend of Vic, and in a position to tell us a lot about him. So we won't be able to hear it live, but let's see the video and see what Joe has to tell us.
Hey Vic, good day mate. I was actually on your way down to your party when I got an emergency call that I had to come to the MIS center. That's where I am now, and was to see some patient that had trouble with sitting on their brains all day. By the way, do you guys wear gloves when you do this stuff? I heard it was so easy that you could actually watch sporting events or, rock and roll shows or whatever. We have this patient pretty much snowed, so he can't tell what we're doing. And, I don't know if you can see this on the screen over here. But this really is easy. I think anybody could do this. Anyway, I'm sorry I'm not at your dinner, and I know there are a lot of people there. And I just wanted to tell you a couple of things. There's something that I'm sure you have no idea about. By the way, is it okay to leave this thing in the patient while you're talking? I'll get the answers to these questions when I see you after the weekend. Anyway, this has stuck with me for a long, long time, and as I said, there's no way you'd know about this. And that is, I came to the clinic in 1976, and Jim Krieger was the chairman of surgery then. And I'd only been here about 6 months, and I think we all got our salary adjustments at the same time of the year, and I didn't get very much, and I think it had to do with the fact that I'd only been here a short period of time. So I went down to talk to Dr. Krieger, and I guess it was maybe Shad Hartwell, and told him what a great job I was doing, and I thought I deserved a little more money. They said, they wanted to show me the APR of a real star here, and that was somebody that I should try and match. So, as I said, this is as fresh in my mind as the first day I was here. And they pulled out your APR and threw it down in my lap and said, take a look at this. Well, folks, this APR was about the thickness of the white pages of the Cleveland phone book. There was no way I could read through all this. And I'm going to take my hand off this and see, hopefully it won't fall out. And certainly at that time thought, this is an individual that I probably could never match, and if this was what it took to stay here, I wasn't sure that I would make it. I'm glad that I have managed to stay here, glad that you're a friend of mine, glad that you're a colleague, and certainly glad that you're the vice chair of surgery. I think in the salute tonight, we certainly should mention about your award as the master clinician for the institution. And I think the importance of that is that this was the first one. If you think about all the people at this place that could have gotten that award, I think the fact that you got it says more than anything else that I could add. The last thing I would say, and that is, in several books I've read, one of the ways to measure the meaning of a man's life is the impact they've had on others. And I think that if you think about all the people you've come in contact with, whether it's colleagues, peers, supervisors, patients, families, that you've helped, this certainly indicates that you have had a tremendous impact on the clinic and on the lives of these people. As I said, I'm sorry I'm stuck here doing this emergency, but I certainly salute you on the 25 years, and I look forward to working with you in the future. Now I have to go back to work because I haven't found what I was looking for. Good night.
Thank you, Joe. And now we're on the home stretch. We're to the colorectal staff. I've often thought of the colorectal department at the Cleveland Clinic as in a variety of terms, a variety of similes. One big family, a few squabbles here and there, lots of naughty children out in the hinterland of the United States. Or maybe a professional baseball team. We're doing our draft at the moment. We'll get some new rookies in. We'll send out some free agents. Vic is the general manager and also the manager. I guess I'm the pitching coach. Ian's the batting coach. Scott's the ball boy. Sorry, Scott. Just slipped out. In any event, it's true, Vic has a huge legacy, and I think it might just be good for us to ask all the colorectal fellows that have trained with Dr. Victor Fazio to stand up, please. Thank you. Vic, I was going to get them to carry you around the room on their shoulders, but I think in interest of time we'll avoid that. And now our department gets a chance to say a few words, a few brief words, and we're going to start with Scott. Scott Strong, if you'd like to come to the microphone.
Thank you, James. I lobbied James to go first just so I wouldn't seem repetitive for everyone else that says things. And just as a little background on myself, I come from a small town in Iowa, and I'm used to being delegated to bat boy responsibilities. And it was with that I came to the Cleveland Clinic in 1989 for an interview for a fellowship or a one-year training position in colorectal surgery. And this was an important day for me because I wanted to make a good impression. And so just to better understand the situation, there are a group of very outstanding candidates and myself sitting in a small room. We stay in there for several hours, and one by one they call you out of the room to come in and meet with the interviewers, who are the staff physicians. No one ever comes back. They always have one fewer chairs than people in the room. And I was the last of the group. And so I'm waiting there, and my anxiety increases as I hear the stellar performance of the fellow candidates and understand my chances of coming to Cleveland are growing more and more remote. And so it's with this that I go into the room as the last candidate, and there's Dr. Victor Fazio, who needs no more comments made about his reputation and his mastery of surgery and the dexterity that he always exhibits in the operating room. And he's flanked by Ian Lavery and John Oakley, and Jeff Milsom was there at the time, and James Church. And my uneasiness must have been well obvious because Dr. Fazio, in his usual humility, manages to stand up and pour his Pepsi all over his lap. And I know that he did that intentionally just to put me at ease and to make things much more comfortable. But still anticipating I was a little bit anxious about things, he took the tablecloth and wiped it all off. And at that moment, I realized that there was more to this individual than what we often see. And from that is built a foundation of my working relationship with Vic. And I can say, having been in both roles as a student as well as a colleague, that he is truly a wonderful person to work with and work for. And in my naivety, I oftentimes think that the things I do just come along by chance or because who I am, only to find out later that it's him working very unselfishly behind the scenes to give me opportunities that I never would have encountered otherwise. And it's because of his unselfish attitude, his mentorship, and his charismatic attitude that I consider myself very fortunate to work with such a rare individual. And I just can't imagine working for anyone else. Thank you, Vic.
Tracy.
I'm like Sharon Madonna, I'm just Tracy. So, you all know who I am, right? The theme for my portion of what I have to say is, behind every great man, there's a greater woman. He's had a lot of great women who have helped him in the past. He's had Beth McGonigal, Cheryl Filardo, Ellie Stanton, Charlene Hamrick, Marty Hodgkin, Molly Modell, Yolanda Ivory, Beverly Olenek, Lynn Doss, Georgia Ndenka, Michelle Barnyard, Wendy Dennis, Paula Pearson, and a few are even here tonight. Pat Patrick, our education coordinator, Mary Iannone, his administrator, that really gives him a lot of support and a lot of help. I know he values her a lot. Joyce Belay, who's always chasing after him, giving him his slides while he's walking out the door, forgetting them. Debbie Quella, Marlene Bambrick, his nurse clinician. Just ask my nurse Marlene. Marlene's here. Melanie Matthews, his secretary. Carolyn Owens, his past secretary, and me. And my husband, who I thank for all the help, because without him I wouldn't have been able to do this course, said I could not be irreverent. So I'm going to say a few things that I know Dr. Fazio, you're really shocked, but a few things that are really from the bottom of my heart. Could I have my first slide, please? I am very proud that there are so many people here who Dr. Fazio has trained, because I really thank you all for coming. If I had to write a paper titled Victor Fazio, the first thing that I would focus on is Dr. Fazio as a teacher. When I came to do my fellowship, I was scared to death. He taught me in the OR. He let me think. He pushed me toward goals I never even thought I could do. He'd say, "You are a good surgeon." And at the times when I really thought I couldn't do something, he'd say, "Yes, you can do it." And he let me do things that I never thought I could achieve. But probably the biggest thing he taught me was how to talk to my patients. All of us who have had that experience know the way he sits there. He may be so hurried, but he makes every patient feel special, and he's really taught me that, and I really thank him. And you know, I love the kind of surgeon he is. I still do things in the OR the way he taught me. My fellows and residents will say, "Why do you do this?" I'll say, "Because that's how Dr. Fazio does it." I don't know why we do it, it just works. And he never gives up on his patients. You guys saw it yesterday. That case, that was terrible that he was doing, but when he said those words, "We may have to abandon this anastomosis," I'm like, oh my gosh. He never gives up, never. You know, and I really doubt if there are many surgeons anywhere in the world who are as technically talented as he is, bar none. I really think so. I had the opportunity to be the special fellow, which is now the clinical associate, and I was just in awe. I watched him successfully operate when I was a special fellow on a patient that everybody in the world said their colostomy couldn't be closed, even the Mayo Clinic, and he hooked them back up and they're still reconnected. I was there, Marlene and I were there when he operated on Kathy Eberling, and he performed that miracle. I remember touching that uterus. He said, "Quit touching that!" And it had her baby in it. It had little Jacob in it. And he resected that rectal cancer. And he hooked her back up. It was clear down right at her anal level. That was really, truly a miracle, and he can perform those things. But he's not perfect. Some days he just drives me nuts. He drives me to distraction. And other days I just take him for granted, when he's got his hair going every which way and he looks a mess and his shirt tail is hanging out and the week-old bagel's in his pocket and the cream cheese, And I really forget what he is until somebody will call me up, one of my friends will call me up, or somebody will say, "Oh, what's he really like? What's it really like to work with him?" And they'll have this sparkle in their eye like they're talking about a movie star or a famous sports figure. But he's really better than that. He is a very famous, humble man who has really made a difference being on this earth. Now, enough of him. Now we're going to really talk about the greatest woman in his life, and I want to thank Pat Senegor for reminding us to do that, his wife, Carolyn. While Dr. Fazio was amassing that impressive CV that Dr. Hahn talked about, Mrs. Fazio was home holding down the fort. And here's Dr. Fazio and Mrs. Fazio when they were younger. She was caring for Victor Jr., Jane, and David. And now that they're off in their careers, she has charge of Sophie, his dog. He thinks he takes care of Sophie, but we all know she really does. She has served the Cleveland Clinic in many capacities, and the most notable for me and for any of the alumni that were at the Foundation House last night was her overseeing of that renovation. And anybody that's here that's worked with Dr. Fazio can testify that when he's getting ready to go on a trip, he waits to the very last minute, like when he's going to go on a lecture, to leave. And who is waiting to drive him to the airport? Mrs. Fazio. And don't you bet he gets in the car and says, "Let's go, hubba, 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 hubba." That's what he does to us in the OR. In February, I had the privilege to accompany the director department had a symposium. And Mrs. Fazio kept him and all of us organized. She was like the den mother. She kept my husband from eating the wrong food. He would have gotten diarrhea. Tom Bambrick kept him out of trouble. She made sure we didn't do any social faux pas in Egypt. We owe her a lot. And that's us in front of that great Fazio pyramid Dr. Church was talking about. So Mrs. Fazio, this award is to honor you. This vase is engraved with our thoughts. Behind every great man is a greater woman. And these roses we think would look lovely in it. And Dr. Fazio, when these roses die, feel free to buy her some more.
the Cleveland Clinic as anywhere else. And where do you turn to when things get difficult? Where do you turn to when you're having troubles with your own patients, with the society, with other medical matters that might come your way? Well, we're lucky because we can turn to Vic, and we know he's going to be there. Vic has always been intensely loyal to the people he's trained, to his patients, to the clinic, to his country, which I find a bit hard to understand, but to his country. And it makes a huge difference to know that there's somebody there that you can trust and is going to be dependable. And I want to thank you, Vic, for that. I also want to thank you for taking me out of little old New Zealand and giving me the chance to come and work in this country, for really making my career. Without you, I'd probably be a little GP in a tiny little seaside town in New Zealand with a dunny for a toilet and a dairy up the street. We've still got a dunny for a toilet where I live, but at least there's a supermarket up the street. And I want to finish my remarks by showing you a serious video that I just put a lot of work into. And really, I hoped it would sum off the evening in a very quiet, serious note. Because can we see the third video thing?
Watch me wallabies feed, mate. Watch me wallabies feed. They're a dangerous breed, mate. So watch me wallabies feed. All together now. Tie me kangaroo down, sport. Tie me kangaroo down.
In stately fashion, the pride of the colorectal fleet, HMS Victor, cruises the lower reaches of the globe. Let's have a look at the ship's log. Oops, wrong log. Let's try that again. October 6, 2000, I, Rear Admiral Victor, commander of HMS Victor, will go on deck and scope out me motley crew. God save me. G'day there, blokes and Sheilas. Victor Fazio here. My right-hand man, a true one-eyed Aussie, if ever I saw one, Captain Iron Lavery.
G'day, mates. Welcome aboard. Just don't touch anything and leave that bloody light alone.
Now, here's our lookout, First Lieutenant James Church. He's quite good with the scope. Hello there, chaps. Have a donut? Maybe a squirt of Vegemite? No thanks, James. Where would we be without Second Lieutenant Tony Senegal, Chief Signaller and Coding Officer?
You there. Did you code for that cannonball? Document that sail, lubber.
Calm down, Tony. Welcome aboard, Third Lieutenant Scott Strong, our Chief Recruiter. Any good recruits, Scott?
And I'm tiny lot, sir. Scruffy, messy. Need a good tidy up.
Okay, Scott. Here's Tracy Hull, our Master of Arms. Who's that mistress? Keeping the crew in order, Tracy?
Billy, sir. The lubbers will not obey orders. How, Sean? Flog 'em all, I say. Flog 'em all.
Calm down, Tracy. Chief Petty Officer Ramsey, what are you doing? I'm losing my lunch, sir. Come now, Chief, keep it together. Here's our master, Miss Yanone. How are we doing, master?
Indicator's fine, Admiral. Right on course.
And the purser, David Johnson. How are the accounts, David?
I'm working on them, Admiral. I'm working on them.
Of course you are, purser. And now for my two youngest crew. First, Mr. Midshipman Delaney.
Sure, Admiral, and it's a fine day. Got a spot of Guinness?
And now, Midshipman Halverson.
Kip, Admiral, have you seen my mascara?
At last we have Mr. Lashner, our ship's surgeon. Not too handy with the knife, are we, mate?
Not too bad. Only lost one today, sir.
One patient?
No, one finger. Admiral, we seem to be under attack. All hands on the poop deck.
Look, Admiral, it's the enemy fleet. We've got them in our sights. Don't shoot till you see the whites of their thighs. I'd give an arm and a leg to win this battle. Okay, maybe an arm and an eye. Are you sure you don't want a donut? With friends like you, James, who needs enemies? Ready, fire! Ah, we've been hit. Church, go inspect the bowels of the ship. We expect every man to do his duty. And don't forget to wash your hands. Our hull is still in ship shape, sir. Are the cannons ready, men? Let's give them everything we've got. Fire! Oh, shit! We've met the enemy, and he is ours. Thank you, man, for helping wipe out our enemy. Oops, sorry, we almost forgot our 21-bun salute.
I've been to cities that never closed down, from New York to Rio to old London town. But no matter how far or how wide I roam, I still call Australia home.
It's fitting that we should give a fellow Aussie the last word on behalf of the staff. And so I'd like to invite the Vice Chairman of our department, Ian Lavery, to come to the microphone. Ian.
Thank you, Jim. Vic, distinguished guests, friends, and members of the department. I could tell a few stories, Vic, but I'm not going to this evening. After a few years, we'll save them for a different occasion, but I've been given the task to wrap up after all the wonderful accolades that you've just received. I can only testify to the accuracy of all of the comments, both from Dr. Codner, an old colleague, both personally and professionally, your patience, and some of the newer members of the department. Testimony to your skills, your long-term colleagues, and your newer colleagues. The old times are more revealing, as per Dr. Codner and Dr. Kerwin. I've had the privilege of being around for a few years and experiencing all the good times. I've been the recipient of yours and Carol's kindness from my very early days in Cleveland right until the present. Through our personal and professional relationship, I can only concur and reinforce what has been said tonight. Looking around the room, you see in what high regard you're held. Friends and colleagues have come from all around the globe. They're joining us here tonight to recognize your accomplishments and to celebrate 25 years as the department chairman. In 25 years, you've succeeded a giant. You stood on his shoulders and didn't stumble. You've built an even better department and an even bigger personal reputation than Dr. Turnbull. This is what Dr. Turnbull would have wanted. I'm biased, I dare say, but I believe that you have built the best department of colorectal surgery in the world. And I can only say that in this time, being, as an Australian would say, a bloody good bloke and a great friend. Thank you. The members of the department would like to give Dr. Fazio this trophy. It reads, Cleveland Clinic Foundation, Department of Colorectal Surgery, honoring Victor W. Fazio, Chairman, Master Clinician, 25 years, October 6, 2000. Thank you, Vic.
Thanks very much. Well done, mate. There's a rude poem about only having one ball, isn't there, somewhere? You can put that in there for now. Now it's payback time. But first, an important thing I have to show you. I have a photograph here of my grandson, our grandson, just 2 years old in 2 months' time. James Church and I belong both to the Nelson Society, which celebrates the achievements of Horatio Nelson, Admiral of the Red, and I think he'd be spitting in his grave if he saw the parody of what went on here a little bit earlier today. Well, this Pepsi-soaked person here now wants to thank all the speakers and the commentators, and I want to thank particularly my boss, Fred Loop, for being here this evening with his lovely wife, Bernie, to Ira Codner, who we've enjoyed a friendship now for over a quarter of a century. Likewise, the presentations by Jim, Lucy, Kathy, Sandy were very well appreciated. And I want to thank all the speakers from today and tomorrow, in fact, all those who have come from near and far to be here to make this course symposium so good. And I want to thank all the registrants for being here too, because this is what supports our scholarly activity in the department each year, and Tracy for her efforts in putting this on. But before I get into the substance of this presentation or this response, I want to again recognize my wife and ask her to stand, please. And I'll be thanking her more formally, but for now I just want to publicly acknowledge the immense importance that she's had in my career here, and for the 14 years prior to that, in which it represented a lot of support through medical school, driving taxis, doing moonlighting as a junior resident, certainly surgical residency, and then graduate work and subsequently junior staff surgeon at the Cleveland Clinic. About a year ago, Tracy Hull approached me about a theme for the year 2000 Turnbull Symposium, and it was pointed out that this would coincide with the 25-year anniversary of the chairmanship in colorectal surgery, and that such a celebration would be nice. This chairmanship followed upon the career of our most famous son and one of the most famous sons of both Cleveland and the Cleveland Clinic, Rupert Turnbull. So I said, quote, okay and thanks, with certain provisos. And as the famed movie maker Sam Goldwyn noted, quote, I don't want any yes men around me. I want everyone to tell the truth, even if it costs them their jobs, close quote. Therefore, these provisos. Number one, the audience would be reminded that this is not a memorial service. It's not a wake and it's not a retirement party. As Mark Twain would say, the news of my recent death is grossly overstated. Number two, any official speaker's remarks should not be overly abusive, derogatory, or related to the end product of the digestive system. Dr. Kerwin came perilously close to pushing this to the limit. Dr. Church, in that last slinging of not mud, past that point. Number 3, any responses I make could be in kind, directed against my fellow colleagues and surgeons. And finally, that the focus of all this would be upbeat and celebratory. However, I thought I could try and respond with the above lightheartedness, but also use this bully pulpit as a forum for expressing to all those who made this possible, as well as perhaps make a few remarks about this 25-year journey. And unlike perhaps some milestones like the recent successful Olympics, it really is all about the journey, not the destination that matters. And the journey has been rewarding beyond description. I mentioned my wife earlier, and I have to again thank her for all the support and sacrifices she has made over these years. It's impossible to touch upon the extent to which that holds and that obtains in the few minutes I have up here, but she knows, at least I hope she knows, how much I appreciate that. Almost as affected and also supported have been my 3 children, Victor, Jane and David. My youngest son, David, just over there, and his lovely wife, my second daughter, Tammy, are here this evening. David, some time back, I thought it would be very nice if we could have a departmental tie, so some of our graduates would be able to be recognized, at least recognize each other, characterized by the one I'm wearing, in fact, which has a Cleveland Clinic logo, and underneath that there is Man Helping Man, and across from that is the Department of Colorectal Surgery. Well, it was my son David who designed this tie, and which we distribute to all of our fellows. I want to also express my gratitude to my mother, Kathleen, who can't be here, of course, through illness, but in the course of pursuing a career such as the one I have here, it has also meant, the counterpoint to that has been missed opportunities for both my mother and my wife's parents, who have not been able to participate as much in the growth and nurture of their grandchildren as we would like. I also want to thank officially at this stage to my colleagues, Ian Lavery, for his very kind remarks. Ian and I have been friends for over a quarter of a century also, and professional colleagues. There's not a finer surgeon anywhere in the world, I think, than Ian Lavery. Jim Church, who's giving new meaning to surgeon scientist with all of his work that he's doing, and now president-elect of the 2 most prestigious national and international societies in inherited colorectal cancer. Congratulations, Jim. Scott Strong, who spoke eloquently and from the heart a few minutes ago. These are just incredible individuals. Scott was just awarded an NIH grant for $1.7 million. Here is a man that does as much surgery as any of us, with in excess of 400 cases a year, and still is pursuing basic bench research looking into the cause of Crohn's disease. And we're extremely proud of this accomplishment. To Tracy Hull, who adds grace to our otherwise graceless lives in the operating room and in the outpatient setting, and for being just a rock to help us with all sorts of things that keep our clinical process on track. Fazio Ramsey, our most recent recruit, who has been recruited by almost all the other departments of surgery here because of his hard work. Tony Senegor, it was a brilliant coup for us, I think, to be able to attract him when so many other major units and good units throughout the United States were trying to get him. Colin Delaney and Amy Halverson, who are both clinical associates who are with us at the present time. And to my former colleagues, Frank Weekly and John Oakley, who I know is in the audience here now, who are just stalwarts and have added tremendously to the luster and the overall success of the department. These are the individuals who have become family over the years, and as one pursues common goals of excellence in our profession. I'm overwhelmed by the number of people who have come here this evening. Almost certainly I'll omit the names of friends and colleagues if I try to name them all, but I must especially thank those travelling from afar. Ian and Veronica Jones from Melbourne, Australia. Ian's down there, and Veronica. Renee Verschuren from Groningen in Holland. Renee was with us over 20 years ago. Liam and Marie Cohen, who's already spoken already, and from Ireland. John Oakley from Australia. Mike O'Riordan from Australia, one of our fellows. Eduardo Granero and Marie Jose from Valencia, Spain. These are just some of those who have made transoceanic trips to get here, but there are dozens more of you out there who have gone to an incredible expense and pain and being discommoded, I think, to come all this way to be here this evening on this special evening for me and my wife. As well as there is in the audience many former fellows and patients from North and South America, staff doctors, nurses, secretaries from the Cleveland Clinic, and administrators. My special thanks, I mentioned before, is to Fred Loop, my boss, whose leadership has really created the environment for not just our department, but all of the departments to thrive, to flourish, and by his support to colorectal surgery, it's allowed us to be better than we are, I think. My thanks also to our many friends whose philanthropy has allowed pursuit of our department's goals through quality research funding, and there are many of these in the audience right now that I see, friends, all of them. The starting point of this journey that I referred to earlier probably began when Rupert Turnbull went visiting in Australia for that week where he was visiting several Sydney hospitals, and I had one of my mentors strong-arm him into accepting me as a fellow here. His leadership then was apparent, and it was inspirational to see him in action and to roll off these numbers and the complete confidence that he showed in the operating room, taking this to another plane, to another level that hitherto I had not dreamed possible. This type of exposure, I think, influenced many surgeons in the audience here now, I think, who came to work with him at different times, and from this one, his learning has been enhanced equally, I think, by what our patients and my surgical fellows have taught me over the years. I'm positive I've learnt more from them than I could possibly have passed on to them, and for that especially I'm grateful. So I want to thank all those patients and fellows, as well as the nurses and secretaries and administrators. One particular gratification of this journey has been to observe the success of graduates of the program that Group Turnbull started. And these individuals, I'll just list a few. Ian Jones, chairman and head of the colorectal surgery at the Royal Melbourne Hospital, the biggest hospital in Australia. Bob Fry, endowed professor and chairman at Jefferson. Ira Codner, professor and former chairman, Washington University, St. Louis. David Beck, chair of colorectal surgery, the Oxford Clinic. Rob McLeod, professor and chairman of colorectal surgery, University of Toronto. John Eggenberger, chairman of colorectal surgery at Henry Ford. Les Bouquet, professor and chairman of surgery, University of Sydney. Liam Kerwin, professor and chair of surgery at University of Cork. Bruce Orkin, who's program director of the Division of Surgery at George Washington. Terence O'Connor, head of colorectal surgery, St Vincent's in Sydney. Jack Mackey, chairman of the Board of Examiners, the Royal Australian College of Surgeons. Susan Galandiak, head of colorectal surgery, University of Louisville. Greg Greeny at Santa Barbara. Kirk Ludwig, head of section at Duke University. Dave Medich, head of section at Allegheny General Hospital, and the list kind of goes on. These are individuals who all received their training at the Cleveland Clinic Department of Colorectal Surgery, and besides these, numerous others who are now in academic colorectal surgery. This is a dream come true for all of us, and particularly, I think, for Rupert Turnbull, whose ambition it was to carve out a specialty that would show its academic excellence, and I think it has achieved that. I also want to thank publicly here one other person, and that's Mrs. Evelyn Cavaci. Now, Mrs. Cavaci is not a name that's going to be known to many of you there, but she and her husband Ed have been quiet boosters for the Cleveland Clinic, and in particular for the Department of Colorectal Surgery for many years, and it was largely through her efforts that she was able to get the wherewithal to fund the Rupert Turnbull Chair in colorectal surgery. And this was sort of started a lot of the more latterly part of the academic accomplishments that we've had, set that in motion through that particular effort. And Evelyn, we thank you very much. So finally, I have to thank our meeting organisers, Pat Patrick, Tracy Hull, Mary Yanone, Marty Hodgson and Debbie, and others from Institutional Advancement like Sherry, Cindy and Bill. Now many have heard of several stories during this evening. And I'd simply remind you of the aphorism that if you can't be right, be funny. Now Dr. Kerwin is funny, and so was Dr. Church. To that extent, I'll let you judge the relative merits of if the speakers have succeeded. To Ian Lavery, I had a counterpoint, a great story, if only he'd have sort of said something bad about me. But he didn't. But I just can't resist. This is a terrific story. Well, it seems that we all wandered into Ian's operating room, and it was a really tough operating day. He had a giant hemangioma of the rectum to deal with. Now, I don't know if any of you guys out there have seen too many of these, but this is a massive tumor, benign tumor, but it's in the rectum. And whenever one takes one out like this, it's like sporting a trophy. It's like catching a 150-pound marlin, and you sort of got to stand beside it. Well, Ian successfully took this out, and it was a beautiful, gorgeous specimen. I mean, you've got to be a surgeon to really like this, but we love this stuff. And he took this out, and it was put in the bucket, and some faithful nurse took it out to the pathology lab. Meanwhile, he's hooking the bowel together with a coloanal anastomosis, and then he says, "Where's that specimen? I want to get a photograph." And they said, "We took it. Just bring that back here right now." So out it comes back from pathology department. It's in the surgeon's substerile room where he's come to the end of the case, and he's in the substerile room opening the specimen. He's opening it with scissors and, of course, wiping out some of the contents of the bowel there. And we have this special new irrigation set in this substerile room which looks a little bit like a giant toilet is what it looks like. And he pressed the wrong button. And the next minute, this slurping motion goes down in which this entire 3-foot specimen is gradually being sucked down in the drain into Lake Erie. And there he is, holding on for grim life, trying to stop this bowel disappearing into this sewer, unsuccessfully. So he comes out of the substerile room, and his hands are in the air. It's gone. Jaw slightly agape, and couldn't quite believe it. Well, fortunately, it wasn't cancer, so the tissue committee problem didn't arise, but that's the story of the case of the disappearing colon. To Dr. Kerwin, I have 2 words for you. George Clooney, all right? Being overweight indeed. I do have it, though, on good authority that when the IRS visited your parish priest, Liam, that was Father Connor Mulcahy, and asked him to confirm the legitimacy of the $10,000 donation to the parish church, asked you whether or not you'd actually paid that, Father Mulcahy simply replied, "He will." To Fezzer Ramsey, whose English is sometimes murdered by malapropisms, he once saw my scrub hat slightly askew, and the OR told me, "Boss, you have a wrong head." That meant somehow that my hat was askew. So everyone now tells me I've got a wrong head whenever my hat's falling off. To Jim Church, who has heaped abuse on all things Australian for being given the "I Am Not Australian" T-shirt award in perpetuity. So Dr. Church wears this with pride, I think. Am I the only one in the whole place who has noticed that the brand name of all the toilets in the operating room is church. Has anyone seen that? You look the next time you see it. It's got church all over it. Have you seen that? He has. He admits it. To Ira Codner, what can you say about Ira? I think his scalp is in erogenous zone or something. That's the only thing I can explain. He certainly never backs away whenever I do that. Pilferer extraordinaire. To my late partner, David Jagelman, and I think he would be here celebrating with us now if he could, for his wry humour. I have two very quick stories about him. One refers to the Scotsman who he was doing a proctoscope on one day, and the Scot had a distinct burr, and David had a very clipped British accent, and David said to him, "You're a Scotsman, aren't you?" And the man replied, "Yeah, you're an Englishman, aren't you?" He said, "Yeah, I am." And David said, as he was advancing that, in that day, rigid scope into the appropriate orifice, said, "You know, I've been dying to do it for years." Whereupon the Scotsman said, "You bloody English have been doing it for centuries." He also observed that one time that he did go to Australia, that when he was going into Australia, he had to fill out the immigration forms, and for entry into Australia, he noticed a box where one had to respond to the question, "Have you ever been convicted of a felony?" ? And he responded, "I did not know that this was still a requirement." Let me say, finally, I am humbled by and appreciative of the honour you have done to me this evening. As a department chair, I've always felt that recruitment was the very first requirement. Recruitment of talent is always the first requirement for success as a leader in our institution. If you're going to attract the very best talent, and as important, provide an environment in which they can be both retained and thrive, then the rest sorts itself out. In this, I count myself fortunate of having in our department what I regard as the very best of the best. And as Rip Turnbull used to say, they can really make you look good. On these ceremonial occasions, it's common to seek out famous quotes and then in turn to quote them. I've chosen a non-famous one. In fact, it's attributed to Anonymous. However, it exemplifies, I think, the desiderata and the what I would call things of value for the surgeon, especially the surgeon scientist, aspiring to excellence. And this particularly, I think, applies to surgeons at Cleveland Clinic. It's entitled 12 Things to Remember, and as I said, by an anonymous author. Number one, to appreciate the value of time. Number two, the success of perseverance. Number three, the pleasure of working. Number four, the dignity of simplicity. Number five, the worth of character. Number six, the power of kindness. Number seven, the influence of example. Number eight, the obligation of duty. Number nine, the wisdom of economy. Number 10, the virtue of patience. Number 11, the improvement of talent. And number 12, the joy of originating. Surely a paradigm for the new millennium. Many thanks and God bless. Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here. Have a safe trip home. We're adjourned.